Michael Jordan sees a teen kicked out of practice for being deaf. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. It was a typical fall afternoon in a small gymnasium on the outskirts of Chicago, where a young teenager, Aaron Miller, stood nervously at the edge of the court, waiting for his turn during the school basketball tryouts. He had always dreamed of playing on the varsity basketball team, ever since he was old enough to hold a ball. His passion for the game had always been strong, but unlike most of his teammates, Aaron wasn't just battling nerves or the fierce competition, he was battling something much deeper. Aaron was deaf. And though he had never let that stop him from pursuing his love for basketball, it made every attempt at proving himself a little harder. His movements on the court were sharp, his basketball IQ high, and his love for the game genuine. But the one obstacle he couldn't overcome was his inability to hear his coach's instructions or the calls from his teammates during drills. In a fast-paced game like basketball, that was a critical disadvantage. As the tryouts continued, Aaron tried his best to stay focused. He kept his eyes locked on the coach's every move, anticipating the next play or drill. But it wasn't enough to escape the judgment that was starting to form. A few of the players had whispered about him behind his back, and Aaron could feel their eyes on him. The gymnasium, which once felt like home, now seemed cold, and each drill that passed, Aaron's confidence began to wane. As the session progressed, Coach Daniels, a gruff, no-nonsense figure, whistled loudly to call everyone to a halt. His eyes scanned the gym, lingering briefly on Aaron, who had missed the last instruction. Aaron's heart skipped a beat when Coach Daniels began to speak. "Aaron, can you hear me?" Aaron looked up, a little startled. His heart sank as the coach, seeing no immediate response, continued. "You're slowing everyone down. We can't afford to waste time during these drills. I'm sorry, but you're cut from the team." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Aaron stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether he had heard the coach correctly. His mind raced as he tried to process what had just happened. The one thing he had worked so hard for, the dream he had carried with him since childhood, was slipping away. The coach turned away without waiting for a response, signaling for the others to continue their drills. Aaron stood there, his heart heavy, the sting of rejection slowly creeping in. A few of the other players shot him sympathetic looks, while others whispered among themselves, indifferent to his pain. As Aaron walked toward the locker room, his legs felt like lead. It wasn't just the words that hurt, it was the unfairness of it. He had worked just as hard as the others. He had shown up every day to practice, his passion and effort evident in every move. But in the end, it wasn't enough. His disability had been the deciding factor. The bitter irony was that no one cared about his skill on the court, they only saw his inability to hear. Aaron walked into the locker room, his mind spinning. He wanted to scream, to fight against the injustice of it all, but instead, he quietly changed out of his gear. As he sat on the bench, staring at his shoes, his world felt like it was crumbling. Basketball was supposed to be his escape, his way of proving himself, but today, it had turned into the harshest reminder of how different he was. As the gym slowly emptied, Aaron was the last one left. He pulled his bag over his shoulder and started to head out, but before he could leave, something unexpected happened. From the corner of the gym, a familiar voice called out to him. It was deep, confident, and filled with authority. "Hey, kid, hold on." Aaron turned, his stomach knotting. The last thing he expected was to hear from anyone after the way he had been dismissed. But to his surprise, it was none other than Michael Jordan, who had just arrived in town for a promotional event and was using the gym to practice. Jordan's presence felt surreal. He was an icon, the face of basketball itself, someone Aaron had only ever seen on TV or in the pages of magazines. Jordan walked toward him with an air of confidence, but there was no arrogance in his stride. He gave Aaron a long, steady look before speaking. "I saw what just happened," Jordan said, his voice calm but filled with a quiet intensity. "I know that must have hurt. But if you're willing to listen, I've got something to say." Aaron, still shocked, nodded slowly, unsure of what to expect. He was frozen in place, still processing the sting of rejection. "You've got something that can't be taught," Jordan continued, his voice even stronger now. "I watched you on that court. You're fast, your instincts are sharp, and your drive is obvious. What you just went through, that doesn't define who you are or what you can become." Aaron couldn't believe it. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player to ever live, was standing in front of him, speaking directly to him. He felt a rush of emotion, the validation he had desperately needed. Jordan's eyes softened as he saw the uncertainty in Aaron's expression. "Listen, I know it's tough. People will judge you, and it's not always fair. But don't let that stop you. The game doesn't care who you are or where you come from. It only cares about how hard you're willing to fight for it." Aaron blinked back the tears that threatened to spill over. Here was the man who had inspired millions, and yet he was speaking to him as if he mattered. Jordan continued, his voice lowering with intensity. "I've had my fair share of doubters. People who thought I wasn't good enough, or that I wouldn't make it. You think being cut from a team is tough? Imagine being told you wouldn't be able to even make it to the NBA, let alone be the face of the game. The difference between them and me is that I kept going. I kept working, and I didn't let the setback stop me." Jordan paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. He placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder, his gaze unwavering. "You've got a shot. I can see it in you. And you're going to keep going, aren't you?" Aaron, who had been holding back tears, nodded. The anger and frustration from earlier were beginning to fade, replaced by a new sense of purpose. He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like maybe he wasn't finished. Maybe this rejection wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. "I won't give up," Aaron said quietly, finding his voice. Jordan smiled, a knowing smile, and gave him a quick pat on the back before turning to walk away. "That's what I like to hear. You've got what it takes." And with that, Michael Jordan, the man who had faced countless obstacles and emerged victorious, disappeared into the gym. But his words remained with Aaron, burning in his chest like a fire that would not die. Aaron stood alone in the gym, the sound of his shoes echoing in the silence. For the first time, he felt like he was ready to face whatever came next. The road ahead would be tough, but he had something the coach, the players, and the world didn't see, an unwavering belief in himself. And with that belief, he was ready to fight for his place on the team. The spark had been lit. And no one could take it away. The morning after being cut from the basketball team, Aaron felt a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, and above all, disbelief. The night had been long, filled with moments of replaying the coach's words over and over again in his head. Aaron's mind kept circling around the phrase, "You're slowing everyone down." It wasn't just the words themselves, but the way they echoed in the gym, cutting through the noise, and leaving him with a sense of helplessness. But more than that, it was the dismissal. The idea that something as trivial as his deafness could define his future on the team was a bitter pill to swallow. He had spent hours practicing, honing his skills, and proving to himself that he was good enough. Basketball was his escape, the place where he felt most alive, where his hearing loss didn't matter. But now, it seemed like it did matter. And no matter how much he tried to tell himself that this rejection didn't define him, it was hard to shake the feeling that it was true. The morning was cold, and the gymnasium was still when Aaron arrived for practice, clutching his basketball gear in his bag. His thoughts wandered between the reality of yesterday's rejection and the small flicker of hope that had been kindled by Michael Jordan's words. As Aaron entered the gym, he wasn't sure what to expect. His mind was racing, but it was clear he needed to find answers. The first few minutes were filled with awkwardness. His teammates were all huddled in their usual circles, but no one acknowledged him. Aaron stood by the sideline, unsure of what to do. He wasn't even sure if he should be there. His place on the team had been taken from him, after all. But then, just as he started to turn and walk out, a voice called out from across the gym. "Aaron! Wait!" It was Coach Daniels, standing at the entrance to the locker room, a serious look on his face. Aaron froze, feeling a slight knot in his stomach. Was the coach here to give him some final words and send him off for good? "Come with me," the coach said, gesturing for Aaron to follow. Aaron, still unsure, followed the coach to the hallway outside the gym. "Look," Coach Daniels began, his voice low. "I know this might seem harsh, but the decision I made was based on team dynamics. We've got a system, a way we run things, and I didn't think it would work with you on the team." Aaron didn't say anything, just nodded, trying to keep his emotions in check. "But last night," Coach Daniels continued, pausing for a moment. "Last night, I had a long talk with some of the guys. They brought up something I hadn't considered before. You see, I've always had a hard time adjusting to situations that don't fit into the norm. But then Jordan showed up, and he gave me a perspective I hadn't thought about. I don't know if you know, but that guy, he's not just a basketball player. He's something else entirely. He saw what you had, and he called me out on my decision." Aaron couldn't believe it. Michael Jordan had spoken up on his behalf? The idea seemed too surreal to be real. Was this really happening? "Jordan told me that a team is more than just about who's the best player. It's about who fits, who pushes others, and who leads when things get tough. And that's when I realized that I was wrong." Aaron felt the tension in his body loosen just a little. It wasn't much, but it was something. The walls of disappointment that had been building up in his chest started to crack. The coach had been willing to listen, willing to change his mind, and that was the first step in Aaron's journey back to the court. "I'm sorry," Coach Daniels continued, "for cutting you like that. You deserve better. You've earned your spot on this team, and I'll make sure the rest of the guys know that. You're in. But it's up to you now." Aaron looked at the coach, still processing what had just been said. He had been given a second chance, but it wasn't just the coach who had changed his mind. It was Jordan's influence, the very same man who had inspired Aaron to keep going. Now, Aaron had to prove that he deserved to be there, not just because Jordan believed in him, but because he believed in himself. Coach Daniels looked Aaron in the eyes and nodded. "You're going to have to work hard, but I know you've got it in you. Just remember, this team is a family. And we don't leave anyone behind." With those words, the conversation ended, but it marked the beginning of something much bigger for Aaron. He wasn't just a kid trying to make it onto a basketball team anymore. He was a part of something larger, a team that would push him to become better, to break through barriers, and to prove that his hearing wasn't his limitation. It was his strength. The next day at practice, things were different. There was a palpable shift in the gym when Aaron walked in. He could feel it, the looks from his teammates, the whispers that had stopped when he entered the room. They had heard the news. He was back on the team, and now it was time to show them what he could do. Coach Daniels called the players together for a quick huddle before beginning the practice drills. "All right, guys. Today's a fresh start. Aaron's been reinstated, and I want everyone to treat him just like any other player. Let's go out there and work as a team." Aaron stood near the edge, watching as the players began their warm-ups. He was still unsure of his place, but Jordan's words echoed in his head. The game doesn't care who you are or where you come from. It only cares about how hard you're willing to fight for it. With that in mind, Aaron took a deep breath and stepped onto the court. He had something to prove, not just to his teammates, but to himself. The drills began, and for the first time since the cut, Aaron felt a surge of determination. He wasn't slowing anyone down. He wasn't a burden to his team. If anything, he could be the spark they needed. As practice continued, Aaron kept his focus. He communicated with his teammates using hand signals and eye contact, making sure to stay in sync with the play calls. His movements were fluid, his energy infectious. Slowly, the other players began to ease into their rhythm with him. They could see that Aaron wasn't just a token player trying to fit in, he was a real contributor, one who knew the game inside and out. Then came the moment that would solidify his place on the team. During a fast break drill, Aaron found himself with the ball in a one-on-one situation. His defender was quick, but Aaron's speed and agility were just as sharp. With a sudden feint, Aaron drove to the basket, using his body to shield off the defender. With a flick of his wrist, he made the shot, a clean, effortless dunk. For the first time since the tryouts, Aaron heard the sound of applause, and not from the coach. His teammates, the very same ones who had once looked at him with skepticism, were now clapping, nodding in approval. Aaron had earned their respect. That evening, Jordan reached out to Aaron personally, offering him a word of encouragement. "You belong here," Jordan's voice came through the phone. "Now, show them why." The next day, Aaron walked into the gym with a sense of confidence he hadn't known before. He wasn't just back on the team, he had earned his place. But it was more than that. This was the beginning of something greater. Aaron had learned that a second chance was not about getting a free pass, it was about seizing the moment, pushing through adversity, and proving that his limitations didn't define him. As he laced up his shoes, ready for another practice, Aaron knew the hard work was just beginning. But now, he had a clear purpose, to become a leader, not just for his team, but for anyone who had ever been told they couldn't make it. And with that mindset, the road ahead seemed full of possibility. The next few weeks after Aaron's reinstatement felt like a blur. What started as a bitter rejection had gradually morphed into something much more. Aaron wasn't just participating in practice anymore, he was becoming a crucial part of the team's dynamic. He had quickly adapted to the coach's system, which focused not just on individual skill, but on communication and teamwork. His understanding of the game had always been sharp, but now it was being put to the test in ways he had never imagined. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Even with Michael Jordan's encouragement and the coach's decision to keep him, Aaron still had to earn the respect of his teammates. Not all of them were as open to the idea of a deaf player being on the team. Some, like Tyler, the team's point guard, had voiced doubts from the beginning. Tyler was a natural leader on the court and had been skeptical of how Aaron could fit into their system. He wasn't used to the idea of adjusting to a teammate's needs, especially when it meant changing how the team communicated. During one of the first scrimmages after Aaron's return, Tyler grew frustrated. They were running a fast-paced drill, and Aaron wasn't in sync with the timing of a particular play. Tyler threw his hands up in exasperation. "Come on, Aaron. You're lagging behind," he shouted, his voice sharp. Aaron's stomach tightened. He could feel the eyes of the entire team on him, and for a moment, the weight of it all pressed down on him. The old feelings of inadequacy crept back in, but he quickly shook them off. He had fought too hard to let his doubts take over now. "I'm trying," Aaron responded, his voice calm but firm. He wasn't going to back down this time. "If you want me to keep up, help me out." There was a brief, uncomfortable silence, but then something shifted. Coach Daniels, who had been watching from the sidelines, blew his whistle and called the team over. It wasn't an outburst, but the authority in his voice was enough to get everyone's attention. "Tyler, come here," Coach Daniels said, motioning for the point guard to step forward. Tyler walked over, his face a mix of confusion and annoyance. "Do you remember when Michael Jordan gave me a wake-up call about the way I was treating Aaron?" Coach Daniels said, turning his attention to the entire team. "It wasn't just about basketball, it was about making sure we all play together, no matter what. Aaron's deaf. That means we need to adjust. Not just for him, but for ourselves, because this is a team. We work together or we don't work at all." Tyler looked around, clearly uncomfortable. It wasn't the public scolding he expected, but it was enough to make him reconsider his approach. Coach Daniels continued, "Aaron has been doing his part. He's been learning our signals, he's been communicating in ways we can all understand, and he's been improving every day. If we're going to succeed as a team, we need to respect each other's strengths and work through the challenges." Aaron felt his confidence rising again. This wasn't just about basketball anymore, it was about something bigger. Coach Daniels had recognized the importance of inclusivity. And, more importantly, his teammates were beginning to see Aaron not as a burden but as an asset. The conversation, though tough, was a turning point. The following practice sessions were different. Tyler, who had previously been frustrated by Aaron's adjustments, now took extra time to communicate with him. He didn't just point at the ball or shout orders from across the court. Instead, he used hand signals, made eye contact, and ensured that Aaron was on the same page. Slowly, other teammates started to follow suit. They realized that by making small adjustments, they could improve not just Aaron's performance, but the entire team's cohesion. During one particularly tough drill, Aaron found himself in a fast break situation, with the ball in his hands and only a few seconds left to make a decision. Tyler was calling for the pass, but Aaron had learned to trust his own instincts more. He saw an opening on the left side, where Scott, the team's most reliable shooter, was ready to take a shot. Without a second thought, Aaron passed the ball to Scott. The play worked flawlessly, and Scott sank the shot with ease. For the first time, Aaron saw a different reaction from his teammates. There were no more skeptical looks or awkward glances. Instead, they gave him high fives and pats on the back. They had come to realize that Aaron's decisions weren't just based on instinct, they were based on a deep understanding of the game, and now that the team was communicating better, they could all benefit from it. The impact of these changes wasn't just felt during practice. As the weeks went by, Aaron began to shine in ways he hadn't before. His leadership grew naturally, and his ability to direct plays and make quick decisions became a key strength of the team. In a pivotal game against a rival school, Aaron found himself in a crucial situation. With just seconds left on the clock, the score was tied, and the game had come down to a final possession. Aaron had the ball in his hands, and the entire gym fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He glanced over at Tyler, who was ready for the ball, but Aaron saw an opening near the basket. His instincts kicked in. He saw the play unfolding before him. Without a second thought, he made a sharp cut toward the rim and passed the ball to himself for a layup, scoring the winning points. The crowd erupted as the buzzer went off, and the team swarmed him in celebration. That moment felt like a lifetime of hard work and determination. Aaron had never been so sure of his place on the team. He wasn't just a player, he was a leader. He had earned his spot, not by fighting against his disability, but by embracing it and making it an asset for the team. After the game, Coach Daniels pulled him aside. "You've come a long way, Aaron. And I think everyone sees it now. You're not just playing on this team, you're shaping it. You're a leader." Aaron smiled, the weight of those words sinking in. It wasn't just about the victory. It was about how far he had come. He had been rejected, doubted, and dismissed, but in the end, he had earned the respect of his teammates, his coach, and himself. The fight wasn't over, but he had already won more than he had ever expected. As the season progressed, the team's bond grew stronger. They weren't just teammates anymore, they were family. The communication that had once been a barrier was now a strength. Aaron continued to push forward, setting the example for others. And Michael Jordan's words from that fateful day still echoed in his mind. "It's not about the challenges you face, it's about how you overcome them." It wasn't just Aaron who had changed. The entire team had evolved. The skepticism and hesitation that had once plagued them were gone. They had learned to play together, not just as individual players, but as a unified force, each supporting the other. And it was Aaron's quiet strength that had shown them how. Through his resilience and leadership, Aaron had not only earned his spot on the team, but he had changed the entire culture of the group. And in doing so, he had proven something even more important: greatness is defined by how we overcome adversity and lift each other up. As the weeks passed, Aaron's place on the team became more secure. The initial challenges of being accepted, of finding his rhythm alongside his teammates, began to fade into the background. Yet, even as things began to improve on the court, the real battle was far from over. Aaron had fought hard to prove himself as a capable player, but what lay ahead wasn't just about his performance, it was about navigating the complexities of leadership, understanding what it meant to be part of something bigger than himself, and maintaining his inner resolve. The spotlight that had briefly fallen on Aaron after his reinstatement had now shifted. But the consequences of his public struggle were still felt in small, subtle ways. There were whispers in the hallways, some of them supportive, others not so much. Some of his teammates had warmed up to him, no longer seeing his deafness as a barrier, but a unique challenge that could be overcome. But there were still players who eyed him with suspicion, doubting his ability to keep up with the team, and questioning whether his inclusion had been a fair decision. Tyler, the point guard who had once been the most vocal in his skepticism, had started to accept Aaron's presence, albeit grudgingly. Yet, there were times during practice when he would avoid eye contact with Aaron, passing the ball in ways that subtly tested his awareness. Aaron noticed the shift in Tyler's attitude, but he refused to let it throw him off. Instead, he turned inward, focusing on the mental toughness he had always relied on. It wasn't just about physical ability anymore. It was about proving to his teammates that he could lead, despite the doubts still lingering around him. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling practice session, the tension reached a boiling point. The team had been working on their defense strategy when Coach Daniels blew the whistle, signaling the end of the drill. Sweat poured down Aaron's face, but he felt satisfied with his performance. He had been tracking his movements carefully, adjusting his positioning without needing to rely on any auditory cues. His teammates, however, didn't share the same sentiment. Tyler stormed off the court, muttering under his breath. Aaron's heart sank. It was clear that something had gone wrong. Despite the progress they had made, Tyler still wasn't fully on board with the changes. "I can't deal with this anymore," Tyler said, loud enough for the rest of the team to hear. "We're supposed to be winning games, and Aaron's holding us back. He's slowing us down with these adjustments. We don't have time for this." Aaron stood frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief. He wasn't used to this kind of direct confrontation, especially not from Tyler, who had been one of the first to offer a tentative handshake after his reinstatement. But now, it seemed that all the progress they had made, all the teamwork they had built, was unraveling. Coach Daniels, who had been watching from the sideline, immediately called the team together. The weight of the moment was heavy. Aaron stood off to the side, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration. He wanted to say something, to defend himself, but the words caught in his throat. He wasn't sure what to do anymore. The struggle he had faced was no longer just about being a deaf player on a basketball team. It was about learning how to stand up for himself, even when others tried to undermine his worth. "Tyler, I understand your frustration," Coach Daniels said, his tone firm but not angry. "But this is a team, and in a team, everyone matters. Aaron has earned his spot here. If you can't accept that, maybe you're the one who's slowing us down." The room went quiet. No one spoke for a moment. Tyler's face turned red with anger, but he didn't argue. He knew better than to challenge Coach Daniels, especially in front of the team. Slowly, Tyler turned and walked off the court, leaving the gym without another word. The rest of the players stood there, unsure of what to say. The energy in the gym had shifted from camaraderie to a tense silence, and Aaron felt the weight of that silence on his shoulders. He had worked hard to prove himself, to show that he belonged, and yet it felt like the entire team was on the edge of falling apart. Was it really worth it? Was he really capable of leading this team when his presence was still questioned by some of his own teammates? After practice, Aaron left the gym early, needing some space to think. As he walked down the empty hallway, he replayed the conversation over and over in his mind. What had gone wrong? What more could he have done? But before he could reach the exit, he was stopped by the sound of a voice calling his name. "Aaron, wait up." He turned to see Coach Daniels walking toward him, his expression more understanding than before. Aaron stopped, his heart still racing from the tension of the practice. "I know that wasn't easy," Coach Daniels said, standing beside him. "But this is part of the journey. Leadership isn't just about the plays you make on the court, it's about how you respond when things get tough." Aaron didn't know how to respond. He had spent so much time trying to fit in, trying to be seen as more than his deafness, and now it seemed like the goalposts had shifted again. "You're doing more than anyone else could ask," Coach Daniels continued. "But it's not just about being a good player. It's about how you handle situations like this. You can't control what Tyler or anyone else thinks, but you can control how you lead by example." Aaron nodded slowly, the weight of the coach's words sinking in. He had always thought leadership was something that came naturally, but now he understood it was earned through moments like this, the ones that tested you, that pushed you to rise above the negativity. I know this isn't easy, Coach Daniels added, but I'm proud of how you're handling it. Keep your head up. We're in this together. The next few days were filled with a quiet kind of tension. Tyler didn't return to practice right away. The team was still recovering from the blow-up, but Aaron continued to show up, as he always had. He practiced harder, pushing through the discomfort, even though he knew that some of his teammates were still uncertain about his place on the team. Tyler eventually came back, but the damage was done. He had been forced to confront the reality that Aaron wasn't just a player who could be dismissed because of his hearing. He was a part of the team, and whether Tyler liked it or not, that wasn't going to change. But Tyler's return wasn't without its challenges. He wasn't quite as receptive to Aaron as he had been before the incident. It was clear that Tyler still struggled with the idea of playing alongside someone who required a different approach. And Aaron could feel that distance between them, despite the coach's reassurances. Yet, with each passing day, Aaron's resolve grew stronger. He realized that being a leader didn't mean waiting for others to accept him, it meant showing them through his actions that he belonged. It meant rising above the uncertainty and continuing to play the game he loved with all his heart. One day, during a scrimmage, the turning point came. With the game tied and only seconds remaining, the ball was passed to Aaron. He looked up and saw Tyler in the corner of his eye, signaling for the ball. But Aaron saw something else, an opening near the basket. Without hesitation, he made a quick decision, took the shot, and sank the winning points. As the buzzer sounded, Aaron was swarmed by his teammates, Tyler among them. This time, there was no hesitation, no discomfort. Tyler clapped him on the back, a genuine smile breaking through his earlier frustration. "Nice shot, man," Tyler said. Aaron grinned, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't just about the shot, it was about everything that had led to it. He wasn't just proving something to himself. He was proving that leadership came from more than just talent. It came from resilience, from showing up when things got tough, and from staying true to what you believed in. The team was finally coming together. And Aaron knew, deep down, that no matter what happened next, he had already won. With each passing week, Aaron's journey on the basketball team became more than just about proving his worth. It became about showing everyone, including himself, that the challenge he faced was an opportunity, not a limitation. Despite the occasional skepticism from some teammates and coaches, he had grown in confidence. What had once been an obstacle, his hearing loss, was now something that he had learned to turn into a unique advantage. No longer was he a player trying to catch up to others, now he was a leader on the court, directing plays, anticipating moves, and earning the respect of his teammates with each game they played. However, that didn't mean the journey was easy. While Aaron had made significant strides in earning his place on the team, there were still doubts from a few players. Some teammates were still unsure how his deafness would impact their chances in high-stakes games. It was a quiet undercurrent, an invisible tension that Aaron could feel, even when unspoken. The pressure to prove himself was constant. Each time he touched the ball or made a decision on the court, he was aware that the success of the play, and by extension, his place on the team, was being watched with scrutiny. But as the season progressed, the opposition wasn't the only challenge Aaron had to face. He began to deal with the growing burden of leadership. Being a team captain had brought its own set of responsibilities. Off the court, he had to be a mediator, a motivator, and an example for others to follow. He wasn't just a player anymore, he was the emotional anchor of the team, the one who had to lift others when they faltered, and the one who had to remain steady when tensions ran high. It became evident during a tense week leading up to a critical game. The team's performance had been inconsistent, and the pressure was mounting. Tyler, still grappling with his initial frustration at having to adjust to Aaron's presence, had started showing signs of fatigue. His temper flared more easily, and his leadership on the court was lacking. Aaron saw the signs of frustration in his eyes during practice, and although things had improved between them, it was clear that there was a lingering tension. One evening, after a grueling practice, Aaron decided it was time to address the issue head-on. He found Tyler sitting alone on the bench, staring out at the empty gym. Aaron walked over and sat next to him, taking a deep breath before speaking. "You know, I'm not here to replace anyone," Aaron said, his voice steady. "I'm here to help. We're all on the same team." Tyler looked over at Aaron, his face betraying a mix of frustration and guilt. "I know," he said, his voice low. It's hard to adjust, man. I didn't think this team would change so much. But you're right. We're supposed to be a team. I don't know how to deal with everything that's going on. It's not just the game, it's everything around it." Aaron understood. He'd felt that same pressure, the weight of expectations pushing down on him every time he stepped on the court. But where Tyler had internalized his frustration, Aaron had learned to channel it into something constructive. He wasn't just playing for himself anymore. He was playing for the team, for everyone who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. "I get it," Aaron said. "But we can't win this if we don't trust each other. I'm here because you and the team gave me that chance. I didn't ask to be a leader, but now that I'm here, I have to make sure we're all in it together. If we let the pressure get to us, we'll fall apart. But if we focus on what we can do, we'll make it through." Tyler nodded slowly, his eyes softening. "I hear you, man. I'll do better. For the team." The conversation wasn't a miracle solution, but it was a start. Aaron had taken the first step in breaking down the wall between them, proving that leadership wasn't about being perfect, it was about being present, about showing that you cared when it mattered most. And in that moment, Tyler realized that Aaron wasn't just on the team for his talent, he was there because of his character. The night before the big game, Aaron sat in his room, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that the upcoming match was more than just another win. It was a test, not just of his skills, but of his ability to lead. The team had come together, but now it was time to see if they could hold their ground when it counted. The next day, the team gathered in the locker room before the game. The usual pregame nerves were in the air, but there was something different this time. The team seemed unified, ready to take on whatever challenge the opposing team would throw at them. Aaron could feel the shift, the bond that had formed between him and his teammates was solidifying. They weren't just playing for the win anymore, they were playing for each other. Coach Daniels came into the locker room and looked at his team with a sense of pride. "All right, listen up," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "We've come a long way. I know there's been some tension, some adjustments. But this isn't just about basketball. It's about how we handle ourselves under pressure. You guys have the talent. Now it's time to show what you can do when it counts. Play as a team, and the rest will take care of itself." The game started off fast. The opposing team was strong, their defense suffocating, but Aaron remained calm. He used the drills he had perfected, the strategies that he and his teammates had worked on tirelessly in practice. But what made the difference wasn't just the plays they had learned, it was their collective spirit. The team had finally learned to communicate, to trust each other. Tyler and Aaron, despite their earlier differences, were now working in sync. Tyler was playing with a newfound energy, pushing the ball up the court with ease, while Aaron directed the offense, making sure everyone was involved. Midway through the game, Aaron found himself in a tight spot. The game was close, and the opposing team had just scored 2 back-to-back baskets. The momentum was shifting, and it seemed like the energy of the gym was pushing against the Bulls. It was at that moment that Aaron knew he had to step up. He wasn't just there to be a contributor, he was there to lead. He called for a timeout, and Coach Daniels gave him a nod. Standing in front of his team, Aaron looked each of his teammates in the eye. "This is our game. We've worked too hard to let it slip. Let's finish this together, all right?" "We got this," he said. His words weren't earth-shattering, but they were exactly what the team needed. They had come a long way, and now they had to finish what they started. When the game resumed, the Bulls came out with a vengeance. Aaron was everywhere, helping his teammates stay focused, facilitating plays, and making critical passes. The score was tight, but with a few minutes left, Aaron saw an opening, a chance for the game winner. With a split-second decision, he dribbled towards the basket, faked a pass to Tyler, and took the shot. The ball swished through the net, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Aaron's teammates ran to him, lifting him up in celebration. The game wasn't just about one moment, it was about everything they had been through together to get there. The struggles, the tension, the doubts, they were all worth it. Aaron wasn't just a player anymore. He had become the heartbeat of the team, the one who led them when they needed it most. After the game, Coach Daniels pulled Aaron aside. "I've seen a lot of players, but I haven't seen many lead like you did today. You've earned your place not just on this team but in the hearts of your teammates. Keep pushing." Aaron smiled, the weight of the game and the season beginning to sink in. The road had been tough, but the victory felt sweeter than any win he had ever imagined. It wasn't just the championship, it was the journey. The challenge had been the test, and Aaron had risen above it. As the team celebrated their victory, the noise of the crowd faded into the background for Aaron. He had just hit the game-winning shot in what could be called the most defining game of the season, but the high of the moment wasn't as overwhelming as he thought it would be. Instead, it was a quiet sense of satisfaction that washed over him. The win was the culmination of everything he had been working for, the trials, the late-night practices, and the hours spent honing his skills on the court. But this victory was different. It wasn't just about Aaron anymore. It was about the team. About how they had come together, overcoming doubts and obstacles, to earn their spot. However, with success came attention, and soon, Aaron found himself in the midst of something he had never anticipated, the spotlight. The win, paired with the story of his perseverance and the challenges he had overcome, caught the media's attention. Journalists, photographers, and local TV stations all wanted a piece of the story, to highlight the deaf player who had not only been reinstated but had led his team to victory. While the media spotlight was thrilling in some ways, it was overwhelming in others. Aaron had never sought fame. All he wanted was to play the game he loved and prove to himself that he could be more than what others assumed about him. The constant media presence began to wear on Aaron. Every game, every practice, was followed by questions about his story, about the challenges he had faced and how it felt to be the first deaf player to lead a high school basketball team to a championship. He wasn't prepared for how intrusive the attention became. Each time he stepped off the court, there were cameras and microphones thrust in his face, asking him to relive the pain of the early rejection, the harsh words from the coach, the doubts he had faced. It felt like he was living someone else's story, not his own. The other players on the team started to notice the shift as well. While they were thrilled with the win and proud of Aaron's leadership, they also started to feel the pressure. They were being asked to speak about their role in Aaron's story, to describe how they had rallied behind him, how they had worked together. It was a lot for all of them, but it felt especially heavy for Aaron. He didn't want to be the center of attention, he just wanted to be seen as a player, as part of the team, not as a symbol of overcoming adversity. One afternoon, after a grueling practice, Aaron sat alone on the bench, his mind racing. The weight of the season was starting to settle in. The game-winning shot, the victory, the celebration, they all felt far behind him now. All he could hear in his head were the questions from reporters, the stories they wanted him to tell. It wasn't that he didn't want to share his journey, it was that he didn't know how to make sense of it anymore. Every time he thought he had come to terms with it, the attention brought it all rushing back. That's when Coach Daniels walked over to him. The coach had always been the steadying presence, but now, even he seemed more caught up in the media frenzy. Yet, there was something different in his approach this time. Instead of diving into the usual pep talk, Coach Daniels simply sat beside Aaron. "You doing okay?" the coach asked, his voice softer than usual. Aaron looked up, surprised. It wasn't often that the coach reached out in such a personal way. He had always been the coach, distant, tough, and focused on performance. But now, he was showing Aaron a side of himself that was less about basketball and more about understanding. "I don't know," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just tired. I never thought it would be like this. All this attention. All these questions. I just wanted to play, you know? I didn't ask for any of this." Coach Daniels nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I get it. It's tough. But here's the thing you need to remember, This spotlight, it's not about you. It's about what you've done for this team. What you've shown everyone is that leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about rising to the occasion, and that's what you've done. You're inspiring people, not because of your deafness, but because of your heart, your will to succeed, and your ability to keep going, no matter the odds. Aaron listened to the coach, but the weight didn't lift immediately. The words were comforting, but they also reminded him of how much he had been thrust into this new world. What was once a simple game of basketball now felt tangled up in expectations, narratives, and labels. It wasn't just his teammates who had high hopes for him, it was the whole school, the community, and even strangers who saw his story as something to be celebrated. You know, Michael Jordan once told me, Coach Daniels continued, that pressure isn't just something you bear, it's something you use. It's a chance to show the world what you're made of. The coach's words struck Aaron deep. It was true, everything Aaron had gone through, everything he had overcome, had shaped him into a player, a leader, who could now step up when the spotlight was on him. The story wasn't just about his deafness, it was about his journey, about how far he had come, and about the fact that he wasn't going to let anything stop him from playing the game he loved. The coach stood up, a reassuring hand on Aaron's shoulder. You're not just here for the press conferences or the spotlight. You're here because you earned it. And you've got a whole team that's got your back. Now, it's your turn to help them. The attention, it'll fade. But the impact you've had on this team, on this season, that's what will last. The next few games saw Aaron continue to grow into his leadership role. The team had become more cohesive, more determined, and more in sync with each other. Tyler, despite his earlier doubts, was now fully behind Aaron. They were working together on the court like never before, passing and moving in a rhythm that reflected their newfound trust in each other. It wasn't always perfect, but it was real. And that was what mattered. But Aaron's struggle with the spotlight didn't fade overnight. He was still adjusting to the balance between being a player and being a symbol of something much bigger. The media continued to follow him, and while he appreciated the support, it was difficult to always feel like his personal journey was being scrutinized for public consumption. One afternoon, as the team gathered for a practice before an upcoming game, a reporter approached Aaron. Can you tell us what it feels like to be the first deaf player to lead your team to a championship? The reporter asked. For a moment, Aaron hesitated. He had been asked this question countless times before, and he had answered it with the same rehearsed responses. But today, something shifted within him. He wasn't just a player anymore, and he wasn't going to let anyone define his story for him. Honestly, Aaron said, his voice clear and confident, it's not about being the first or anything like that. It's about being part of a team. It's about the work we've put in, the moments we've shared, and the way we've learned to trust each other. This isn't about me, it's about us. The reporter nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. But for Aaron, it felt like a breakthrough. He didn't need to be anyone else's inspiration. He didn't need to be the face of a movement or a cause. He just needed to be himself, someone who loved the game and was willing to fight for his place in it. That night, as he lay in bed thinking about the season ahead, Aaron felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just in this for the spotlight, for the accolades, or for anyone else's approval. He was in this for the game, for the teammates who believed in him, for the coach who gave him a second chance, and for the love he had always had for basketball. The spotlight might have been on him, but Aaron knew that it was the team, the journey, and the game itself that truly mattered. As the season progressed, Aaron felt the weight of leadership on his shoulders more than ever. His role as team captain wasn't just about setting a good example anymore, it was about pushing his teammates to perform under pressure, guiding them through the difficult moments, and ensuring that they remained united in the face of mounting expectations. The season was shaping up to be the most important of his career, but it was also proving to be the hardest. The team's biggest test came when they faced their fiercest rivals, the Elmwood High Eagles. The Eagles were known for their aggressive defense and physical play, but what made them particularly dangerous was their point guard, Chris Harris. Chris wasn't just skilled, he was unpredictable, a player who could turn a game in an instant. He had been one of the best players in the league for years and was known for his trash talk and his ability to get under opponents' skin. This time, however, there was something more. Aaron had heard whispers that Chris was targeting him, not just as a player but as a way to show the entire league that his success wasn't legitimate. Chris saw Aaron's inclusion in the team as a challenge to the old guard, an unwelcome disruption to the way things had always been done. The first time Aaron faced Chris was during a practice session leading up to the big game. It was an intense scrimmage, one that the team had been looking forward to for weeks. Aaron was ready for the challenge, but as the practice wore on, he could feel Chris's eyes on him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. During a fast break drill, Chris came up to Aaron, giving him a quick shove as they fought for the ball. It wasn't enough to cause a turnover, but the message was clear. Chris was testing him. He was trying to see if Aaron would back down. "Thought you'd be quicker, man. You're slow, just like the rest of your team," Chris said with a smirk, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The players around them fell silent, unsure of how to react. Aaron didn't respond at first. He knew that reacting would only escalate the situation. Instead, he focused on the game, staying calm and letting his actions speak louder than his words. He wasn't going to give Chris the satisfaction of a reaction, not today. The ball came back to Aaron's side, and he broke away from Chris's defensive pressure, pushing down the court with a fluidity that had become second nature. He drove to the basket, making a beautiful pass to his teammate, Justin, who scored with ease. The play wasn't flashy, but it was effective. And as Aaron jogged back down the court, he could see Chris seething, the frustration evident in his eyes. That was the moment Aaron knew that Chris wasn't just trying to get in his head, he was trying to break him. The days leading up to the game against Elmwood were filled with tension. Aaron could feel the energy in the locker room change. The players were more focused than they had ever been, but there was also an undercurrent of unease. The rivalry between the two teams had always been heated, but this year felt different. It wasn't just about basketball, it was about pride. The Eagles had always been at the top, and they didn't like the idea of a team like theirs coming up fast behind them, led by someone like Aaron. Coach Daniels knew how important this game was. He had prepared his players for the physicality they would face, and he reminded them repeatedly not to let their emotions get the best of them. "They'll try to get in your head," Coach said during the final pregame huddle. "Don't fall for it. Play your game, stick to the plan, and stay together. We've got something they don't, teamwork." But despite the coach's pep talk, Aaron could see the nervous energy on his teammates' faces. This was it. This was the game that could either make or break their season. The moment the game started, it was clear that the Elmwood Eagles had come prepared. From the first whistle, Chris was all over Aaron, pushing, shoving, and doing everything he could to get into Aaron's head. At first, Aaron tried to shake it off, focusing on the game, but Chris wasn't giving him a second to breathe. With every possession, Aaron could feel the pressure mounting. The physicality of the game was taking its toll, and the Eagles' defense was stifling. But what Aaron hadn't anticipated was the mental battle Chris was waging. Every time he made a move, Chris was there to trash talk, to knock him off balance, to make him second-guess every decision. At one point, after a hard foul under the basket, Chris leaned in close and whispered, "You're not even supposed to be here, are you? They let you play because you're the inspiration. But you're not good enough to beat us." For a split second, Aaron's heart raced, and the words hit harder than he expected. He wanted to respond, wanted to fight back. But in that moment, he remembered what Coach Daniels had said, "Play your game." Instead of engaging in the battle Chris was trying to start, Aaron focused on the game itself. His mind cleared, and he stopped worrying about what Chris said. He focused on what he could control, the ball, his teammates, and the next play. And when the opportunity arose, he took it. Late in the third quarter, the game was tight, with the Eagles up by 3. Aaron had the ball, and for the first time in the game, he wasn't thinking about the pressure. He wasn't thinking about Chris or anyone else. He was thinking about the team, about his responsibility to them. He drove toward the basket, faked a pass to Tyler, and instead spun around his defender. With a quick move, he made a layup, cutting the Eagles' lead to 1. The gym erupted. His teammates rushed over to congratulate him, their voices loud with excitement. But Aaron didn't let the moment linger. He knew there was still work to be done. The game came down to the final minute. The score was tied, and both teams were exhausted. Elmwood was pushing hard, trying to break through the Bulls' defense, but Aaron was determined not to let the pressure break him. On a critical defensive possession, Aaron found himself one-on-one with Chris. This time, Chris's aggressive play wasn't going to work. Aaron had learned to stay calm, to trust his instincts. Chris tried to push Aaron to the side, but Aaron held his ground. He kept his focus on the ball, watching Chris every move, anticipating where he would go. As the shot clock ran down, Chris made a move toward the basket, but Aaron was ready. He jumped, blocking Chris' shot cleanly. The crowd gasped, and the ball bounced into the hands of Tyler, who quickly passed it to Justin. Aaron's heart was pounding as he watched Justin drive toward the basket. The seconds seemed to stretch as he looked on, knowing that this could be the play that determined their season. Justin made a smooth pass to Aaron, who was open at the three-point line. Without hesitation, Aaron took the shot. The ball flew through the air. The crowd held its breath as it sailed toward the hoop. Time seemed to slow down. Swish! The crowd erupted into chaos as Aaron's shot went in, giving the Bulls the lead with only seconds left on the clock. The Eagles had no time to recover. The buzzer sounded, and the game was over. The Chicago Bulls had won. Aaron was mobbed by his teammates, but his eyes immediately sought out Chris. For a brief moment, their eyes met, Chris, still fuming with frustration, and Aaron, who had shown him and the world that he wasn't just good enough to play, he was good enough to win. That night, the team celebrated, but Aaron stayed quiet. He knew that the victory wasn't just about the shot he made, it was about the journey it had taken to get there. The rivalry, the trash talk, the doubts, it had all led to this moment, where the team's unity, determination, and belief in each other had triumphed. For Aaron, it wasn't just about overcoming Chris Harris. It was about overcoming every expectation placed on him, every obstacle in his way. And now, the whole team had seen it, they were in this together, stronger than ever. The Chicago Bulls season had been an emotional roller coaster. From the moment Aaron was cut from the team to his incredible game-winning shot in the most crucial game of the season, it was clear that this team had become something more than just a collection of players. They had become a family, bound together not just by basketball but by mutual respect, trust, and the understanding that adversity was something they could face and overcome together. But now, as the season drew to a close, Aaron knew that the real test wasn't just about winning the championship, it was about leaving a legacy. The last few weeks had been a blur of preparation, challenges, and victories, but now it was all coming down to the final game. The team had made it to the championship, a place Aaron had once only dreamed of. But as they entered the locker room before the game, there was an unusual calm that hung over them. The pressure was still there, but it no longer felt like an insurmountable force. Aaron had been through the worst of it, rejection, doubts, media attention, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever. Coach Daniel stood before the team, a rare smile on his face. "All right, this is it. You've earned your spot here. I don't need to say much more. You know what this game means. We know what we're up against, and we know we can win if we stick together." Aaron looked around the room at his teammates. Tyler, who had once been skeptical, now stood beside him, his confidence unwavering. Justin, who had become Aaron's closest ally on the court, gave him a quiet nod. They had all grown together, and now they were ready to face whatever challenges the game would throw at them. The game began, and from the tip-off, it was clear that this championship wasn't going to be easy. The opposing team was tough, well-coached, disciplined, and highly skilled. But the Bulls were no longer intimidated. They had faced challenges before, both on and off the court, and now they knew how to fight through adversity. Aaron felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as the game unfolded, his focus laser-sharp. It wasn't just about playing, it was about leading. Aaron could see the way his teammates looked to him now. When things got tough, when the other team went on a run or the referees made questionable calls, they didn't look for someone to blame, they looked for someone to lead them through it. And Aaron, for the first time, felt fully capable of that responsibility. The first half of the game was a back-and-forth battle, with each team exchanging leads, but the Bulls' defense was holding strong. Aaron, who had always been a scorer, was now just as focused on stopping his opponents. He was communicating with his teammates more than ever, directing them, keeping them focused. He wasn't just playing for himself, he was playing for the team, for everything they had worked for. At halftime, the score was tied, and Coach Daniels gave them a few quick words of encouragement. "We've got this. Keep pushing. Remember, they're just a team like any other. They bleed just like we do. We've earned our place here, and we're not backing down." The second half started, and the intensity of the game ramped up. The opposing team was relentless, pushing every player to their limits, trying to break their resolve. Aaron could feel the pressure building, but he kept his cool. He had been here before, in practices, in scrimmages, in those critical moments when his team was depending on him. He wasn't going to let it slip now. With just a few minutes remaining, the game was still neck and neck. The opposing team had taken a small lead, and the tension in the gym was palpable. But then something unexpected happened. The pressure that had been weighing down on the Bulls suddenly shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It was fire. They dug deep, communicating on a level they hadn't before, moving as a single unit. Aaron had the ball with just under a minute left, and he knew it was his moment. The shot clock was ticking down, and the entire gym seemed to hold its breath as he dribbled past his defender, eyes scanning the court for an opening. The defense collapsed on him, but in that split second, he saw his teammate, Tyler, in the corner. With a flick of his wrist, Aaron passed the ball to Tyler, who caught it in perfect rhythm and launched the three-pointer. The ball flew through the air, and in that heartbeat of time, everything stopped. Swish! The crowd erupted in noise, but all Aaron could hear was the pounding of his own heart. Tyler had done it. The Bulls were up by 3 with only a few seconds left. The opposing team had no timeouts left, and they couldn't recover. It wasn't just the shot, it was everything that led to it. Aaron's ability to see the floor, his decision-making, and the trust he had built with his teammates had paid off. This was their moment. They had fought for it, earned it, and now they were on the brink of something special. The final buzzer sounded, and the Chicago Bulls had won the championship. Aaron stood on the court, his legs weak with exhaustion, but his heart was light. His teammates rushed over to him, lifting him up, celebrating not just the win but the journey that had led them here. They had overcome so much, doubt, tension, personal struggles, and now they stood together as champions. As the crowd chanted and the confetti rained down, Aaron felt a surge of emotion. He wasn't just celebrating the championship, he was celebrating the transformation that had taken place over the course of the season. From being cut from the team to leading his squad to victory, he had become more than just a player, he had become a leader. And this victory wasn't just for him, it was for everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough. After the game, Coach Daniels found Aaron in the locker room, amidst the chaos of celebrations. The coach pulled him aside, his face beaming with pride. "You did it," Coach said, placing a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "You led this team to victory. You showed everyone that leadership doesn't come from the loudest voice or the flashiest play. It comes from within. You believed in yourself, and you helped your team believe, too." Aaron, still catching his breath, smiled. "We did it. I didn't do it alone." "No," Coach Daniels agreed. "But you were the one who got them to believe. That's what makes you a champion." The team gathered for the championship photo, their smiles wide and genuine. For Aaron, it wasn't just a moment of victory, it was a moment of realization. He had set out to prove he belonged, and not only had he earned his place, but he had also shown his teammates what true leadership was all about. In the days that followed, the media attention continued, but Aaron's focus remained on the team. He never saw himself as the center of attention, but rather as part of something bigger. The interviews, the articles, the accolades, it didn't matter as much as the bond he had formed with his teammates. They were a family, and this championship was as much about them as it was about him. As he walked through the halls of the school with the trophy in hand, Aaron reflected on how far he had come. His journey hadn't been easy, and it hadn't been without its setbacks. But through it all, he had learned that greatness wasn't just about skill, it was about resilience, about trusting others, and about staying true to yourself, no matter the obstacles. The championship wasn't just a final achievement, it was the legacy that Aaron would leave behind, not just as the player who led his team to victory, but as a reminder that with hard work, belief, and heart, anything was possible. And that was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life.